Good morning, everyone. It is showtime, the moment you have all been waiting for. I am super excited to be before you all today. You have a phenomenal workshop in store. So welcome to the HBCU Plus Entrepreneurship Conference hosted by Bowie State University. I hope you're feeling energized. I hope you're feeling excited. You have some amazing guest speakers ahead of you today. I think that a lot of, and just to give you a bit more backstory on this session before we dive in and introduce our guest speakers, an important component of this session, bridging, connecting the classroom to the boardroom, was based off experience from a lot of HBCU students who come to our team saying, hey, I'm pursuing entrepreneurship, but in some regard, I want that to connect to the real world, not just the business acumen of it, not just the theory of it, not just the book text of it. And so you have some amazing speakers today who are not just faculty and staff at HBCUs, but also entrepreneurs as well. They own their own businesses. So I'm super excited today. They have some amazing gems for you, not just for faculty on bridging that gap between the book text and the theory to the real world, but also for the students who are looking to dive more into entrepreneurship and they want to know more resources on how can I get my hands on to real world entrepreneurship experience, even if I'm not an entrepreneur. So this will be a phenomenal session, very pen to paper session. Please get your notepads out, students, faculty, please get your notepads out as well, because we have some phenomenal guest speakers today. And so first, just to run through them and introduce them all. First, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Wendy Edmonds. Please come in the chat and show her some love. Also, I want to see some energy in the chat. Drop your HBCU. Let us know which HBCU you're representing, that you're currently at, where you graduated from. But first and foremost, we have our moderator, Dr. Wendy Edmonds, and she is the interim chair of management, marketing, and public administration at Bowie State University. But as I said, not just faculty, phenomenal faculty, but also entrepreneurs. So she also owns her own business and she is the founder and CEO of her company that she'll be able to share more about for you all as well. And so that's Dr. Wendy Adams. Next up, we have Mr. Sean Powell, who's actually tuned in from Uganda right now. He'll be sharing some amazing gems for you all today. And so he is the executive director of engagement of the foundation, also Melanin Valley Company, as well as he supported VCU as well as far as their entrepreneurship program, as far as being a director over there. So phenomenal job from Sean's standpoint. Next up, we have the one, the only Dr. Tamara Lucas. She is a professor, an adjunct professor at Coppin State University, but also owns her own business, the Cube Network, which I'm sure she'll tell you, or the Cube Cowork, which she'll tell you all a bit more about as well. And then last but not least, we have Dean Isaac McCoy, who is the Dean of the School of Business and Entrepreneurship and CIS at Stillman College, but is also a co-founder and senior director of strategy of his own company as well. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Dr. Wendy to share more about her journey and just kick off our amazing session for connecting the classroom to the boardroom. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. We are so excited to be here and thank you all for coming, for all of you who have joined us. You could have been somewhere else, but you chose to be here. So I'm going to ask for a quick round for everybody to go around and share a bit about the entrepreneurial side and your business. So for me, I've done a nonprofit as well as for-profit. And our for-profit business being really friendly to the environment. We take reclaimed wood and make tables and housing and tables and wine racks. So anything that you can think of, the creativity is there. So we really get excited about the artwork and the fact that we don't take from the environment, we use trees that are already down. So how about you, Dean McCoy?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. One, it's a privilege to be here, and thank you, Bowie State, for inviting me to this. So a little bit about myself, as the intro mentioned, I serve at the intersection of academia as well as the private sector. I have worked along with great co-founders over my 20-plus year career. So we founded nonprofit organizations, to for-profit organizations. A couple of things that I do now. One of our organizations called the T.H.E.M Group. We're a business strategy and innovation / government relations group. Also have co-founded the I2J Group, which is a private equity firm. So we buy companies in several different disciplines, but we do it with the lens of how do we build community. And so our private equity firm looks at the cities and the industries that we want to invest in those, own those, to how do we, once again, build communities around this country. And then one of the latest ventures that we have is a AI company that focuses on the construction and using AI and predictive analytics to do some work. And so you'll hear more about that a little bit later on. But that's a new company that we just started as well. So that's just a couple of things that I do.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Lucas.
Good morning, everyone. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. So Dr. Samira Lucas, I'm an assistant professor at Coppin State University in Baltimore, but I am also the CEO and co-founder of the Cube Cowork, which is the largest Black women-owned co-working space in the United States. And we provide on-site babysitting services. So we're focusing on the mom entrepreneur. I co-founded an organization called the National Association of Mom Entrepreneurs 10 years ago, where we help to provide entrepreneurship training, resources, and advocacy to mothers, especially mothers in underserved communities. And I don't think that I could be a great professor or business owner if, I wasn't also a business consultant that I launched over 14 years ago. So I work with organizations who are working with entrepreneurs and really providing them either the consulting side of things and focusing on building and scaling their program, or working directly with the entrepreneurs and specifically tech-based entrepreneurs. So that's me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Powell.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me. Live from Uganda, Africa, at Chimbogo University. And I'm representing Central International College. As you can see, we take, college to the international lens and try to connect HBCUs with colleges in Africa so we can strengthen that relationship between African Americans and Africans. We want to make sure that you all are aware of that endeavor and able to participate in it, as Bowie State and all the other HBCUs that you're a part of as well in America. So me, entrepreneurially, I started off with Engage the Foundation, which is a community-based organization giving internships to college students to different community-based efforts and organizations. I started off in Richmond, Virginia. Then I also had a for-profit side called YOLO the Enterprise when I started off in college. And of course, that was about having fun. You only live once. So of course, we had to throw some parties and make some money to support the community endeavors that we were doing. So that's how I got started in entrepreneurship. Then that led into many different businesses. As you all know, sometimes you become a serial entrepreneur because there are many different needs that you want to impact in your communities. So we developed a facility. It was called Workshop. It was a co-working, co-living, co-retail space in Richmond, Virginia, had apartments on the top and the retail space on the bottom so that people could actually live there and work there while the students assisted them with their businesses as interns. And now fast forward, that membership platform Workshop is completely virtual. We've collaborated with a community-based organization called the Human Connection so that there's a healthcare component for entrepreneurs. So in collaboration, Workshop and the Human Connection, created Melanin Valley. So of course, on the West Coast, you all heard of Silicon Valley, which created Facebook and, big tech companies. So we wanted to create Melanin Valley, which was more human-centered, instead of silicone, which is the plastic. So we wanted these human-centered, endeavors and innovations to have support of funding, support of investors that are more conscious, and creating, space for our melanated people, but for everyone, all humans. So Melanin Valley is now developing a bank. I'm here with Chimbogo University to, make sure that that bank is international. So we utilize a lot of foreign currency exchange to make sure that people are having their savings accounts, growing with these trades and having the students take care of those accounts for you. So that's a little bit about Melanin Valley. And of course, the human connection side of that is the mental and behavioral health side for the entrepreneurs while they're going through their journeys. So that's a little bit about my entrepreneurial endeavors, getting started. And now I'm also in the real estate industry. So I've developed some properties here in Africa, out in Cameroon. We have 6 one-bedroom apartments, that have the full kitchenettes and bathrooms and everything. Then we have 2 3-bedroom houses next to them. And those are going to be facilities that we utilize for the study abroad component for the HBCUs that partner with us when they want to come to Africa. So yeah, that's just a little bit about my entrepreneurial endeavors. As you all may know, that serial entrepreneurs in all of us. We might see many different aspects that we want to tap onto, and kind of align those with, what we started with in the beginning. So I'm, grateful to be here. And as you can see, I have some of the, Chimbogo University students behind me. They're going to be practicing their pitches as well today. Of course, we're going to be collaborating with T.H.E.M and Venture for Them as much as possible to allow these pitches internationally and globally to get recognized and be supported. So thank you, Keontae, and Venture for Them and Bowie State, everybody for having me, and I'm just happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you along with this powerful panel, and I see that our virtual audience has to know who is here on the panel for today. So let's begin with talking about the entrepreneurship curriculum. I don't have to tell you, because we already know that as educators, we have this challenge between balancing teaching theory with hands-on experiences in our courses. There's value incorporating real-world entrepreneurship into the HBCU curriculum because it can create a powerful opportunities for our students. Share with us how you make that magic happen. The first to unmute is the one to go. How do you make that
I'll
happen?
go.
Okay.
So I'm actually broadcasting live right now from my class, and I thought it was extremely important for the students to get firsthand experience on what it's like to do speaking engagements, right? There are a lot of technical skills that they can get from just watching me be part of an actual panel, in addition to learning while they are here around those that are on the panel as well. And so what I like to do is really provide the students an opportunity to engage with my network, engage with some of the problems that entrepreneurs are dealing with on a daily basis by bringing that directly to the classroom. So bringing speakers and giving them real world case studies, real life working with like entrepreneurs or business owners with their course projects where they're actually adding value and to the business owners. And so I just think it's important to leverage the networks that we're building outside of the classroom and bringing those networks inside of the institution and incorporating that inside of our curriculum. And so like today, like I said, they're getting firsthand experience on what it's like to accept a speaking engagement, balance it with all of the other hats that you're wearing, but also see how to conduct yourself while you're on you're doing a speaking engagement. What does that look like? What does the preparation look like? So that's some of the things that I've done to incorporate entrepreneurship in the curriculum.
Thank you. One of the things that I think about too in the classroom is that if we show a video, a YouTube, or a clip of something that's involving entrepreneurs, they just see that small version. They don't get the whole story. And that's the value that you bring when you have guest speakers come into the classroom to tell their stories. I see you, Dr. McCoy. Dean McCoy's itching.
Yeah, no. I just wanted to add to that because one of the things at Stillman College, we when I started at Stillman College several years ago, it was just a school of business. We expanded it to include entrepreneurship, and then the other parts are tech and CIS. But one of the things when we were looking at how do we evolve academically into a space of entrepreneurship, a couple of things I wanted to, we started with at Stillman, and other things I work with other institutions to think about is first, the reality of things, right? So academics, we talked, as you mentioned, it was like we're theory, right? And so being an entrepreneur, we understand knowing is great, but actually application is another. And so we have to understand the differences between the institutions that we're doing, right? Academic institutions and our corporate space are just different in a sense that, once again, excellence is you get an A, you do really well in the class, that doesn't mean you're a good entrepreneur. And that's something that we have to help understand and train not only our faculty and our scholars. So what does that look like? How does failure get to excellence? And so how do you bake that into a curriculum where if you get D, you're saying I didn't do well in the class, but you may not do well at your first venture, but that launches your second. So how do you now connect these two dots? That is extremely difficult. So the first thing is that how do you create the philosophy of what this is to be an entrepreneur? I have a number of scholars that are always looking and saying, I want to get a degree in entrepreneurship because I want to be an entrepreneur. And the first thing I tell them, I was like, the degree doesn't make you an entrepreneur. The opportunities get you in the persistence, perseverance, connection. So there's other qualities that we have to talk about. And so as we were building our entrepreneurship curriculum, it was with that in mind. Well, like you said, experiential learning, that's connected, but it has to be the foundational piece if we're literally trying to make entrepreneurs, because it's access to market, it's getting in the market, it's not knowing about the market. And those are slightly different when you're working in a higher ed institution. And so it was the foundation of understanding where we're trying to take them and then bringing in the resources that starts with practical application, getting in the market, but then also being knowledgeable about the work that you do, if that makes sense.
Does make sense. And it's more than just checking a box for our students that mission accomplished. I finished this course. It's also what you said about bringing in our resources, our relationships, and our experience into that classroom. Dr. Powell, did you want to share?
Sure, yes, I agree. The application is, probably the sweet spot of entrepreneurship, and, where it actually gets fun. Just like in any academic, major, you're gonna learn a lot from the book and learn a lot from the professor. But it's really fun when you actually apply what you're learning. So, I encourage the students to, make sure they take what they're learning, and actually try to apply it with the professors. As I've been here at Chimboga University, I've realized that a lot of the professors, being that their income level is a little bit different than it is in the US, they're not fully sustained by just being a professor. So oftentimes they have side businesses that they encourage the students to even be a part of, so the students can get real life, application while they're still in school before they even graduate. That's one of the things, in US, we always faced with graduating with a bunch of debt or graduating without a job in the field. So entrepreneurship is a way to actually practice while you're still in class. So, any students out there that are, currently still in class, all the professors out there that are entrepreneurs, definitely encourage you to allow the students to participate in your endeavors. That's how I created Engage Foundation, to begin with. It was literally about interning, with different organizations while you're still in school. And a lot of those organizations were startups, were community-based, nonprofits and things of that nature that needed support, that didn't have the resources to pay manpower or to have a full-time staff and things of that nature. So the interns actually help them to develop those nonprofits. So, if you're still in school, I encourage you to start while you're still in school and utilize your university as a lot of support, for, your endeavor, and vice versa for the professors. While you're still, teaching, definitely utilize your students so that they can get some hands-on experience and taking that, education that you're giving them and putting it into practice. So yeah, like, just piggybacking off everything everyone else said, and, really kudos to, you guys doing that work and representing.
I also think that it encourage our students to get different types of licenses. You mentioned real estate license. I think about my son who went off to HBCU, of course. Aggie, he's the Aggie, North Carolina A&T. But what happened at the end when he graduated and we all went to the graduation and then to the cookout at this house, and we're all enjoying ourselves. And I thought, well, I'll stay and I'll help clean up. This is what our role is, right? We're just going to help. We're just so excited, only to find out that was his house. And what he had done was made the investment so that could help to finance what he wanted to do as an entrepreneur. So he was thinking way ahead. But these conversations begin ahead of time, wouldn't you agree? So even when we talk about how do we relate to our students, I think about myself, and I often share how I was an entrepreneur at 8 years old. So I was the third grader braiding hair and creating designed hairstyles and getting paid. And it was good because I was doing what I enjoyed. It was my passion. And I also grew up under my grandmother, who also was an entrepreneur. But in the classrooms, everybody doesn't have a room full of Wendy's. So how do you make entrepreneurship relatable to students who might not see themselves as entrepreneurs?
I can start with that part. One of the things that, as I mentioned before, is about philosophy. And so when we talk at T.H.E.M, when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's a thinking. It's critical thinking, problem solving, looking at things from a different lens. And so everyone has the ability to do that, even if it's on a small level. I can ask the question of, how did you get to class today? How can you get there more efficiently, right? Just thinking about things very critical. And then the other part too is that my fellow panelists mentioned is that experiential learning matters. And I'll give an example. One young person, I had them come and spend a day with me. And when they spent the day, they were looking at all the things that I had to handle, from school to the company. And some of the things that they learned within that is that I can't do everything. I'm not good at everything. But that's okay, because every company I've ever started in the last 25 years has multiple founders, because they supplement what I can't do. So I don't have to sit and get 5 degrees to learn every aspect about business and the economy to be an entrepreneur. Like I said, I have to have persistence, I have to get into the market, and I have to have support. And so that's one of the things that I do stress with our scholars, even our faculty. As Dr. Powell mentioned, getting our faculty involved. A lot of them are saying, I'm a teacher, I'm an instructor, I'm not an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurship is literally solving problems, and everyone has the ability to do it. Now, if you solve the problem to make money, that's once again, slightly different. And so that's another process that you go through, but everyone is entrepreneur. And so what we do at T.H.E.M, once again, is how do we start the foundation of everyone is an entrepreneur? How do you build your critical thinking, problem solving skills, but then also how do you build a team to solve that problem? So everyone is included, but everyone can't own a business, but everyone can be an entrepreneur.
Yes, thank you.
I totally agree with what Dean McCoy said, but I also help them turn their complaints into concepts, right? We know students always are complaining about something, right? Like, why is this way? Why is this that way? And so I try to help them figure out through critical thinking. Because we're in class, I know they all heard you say critical thinking skills that I'm constantly saying and instilling in them. But how do you take those complaints and turn it into actual business concepts? And what does that process look like? In addition to sharing my journey, because sometimes students feel like that they are so disconnected, or professors are disconnected to what they're going through in life. I grew up in the area where Coppin is, and so it kind of makes it a little easier for me to give examples of how I took my journey and turned that into businesses, right? And how I created generational wealth, and how, society right now will tell you it's easy being an entrepreneur, but what does that journey really look like? Are you willing to do the hard work? And just giving them those small steps of, this is what it takes, but this is what it actually looks like as well. And so when they come to me with a complaint, we're going to turn that into a concept, and you're going to work hard on trying to figure out how do you bring that concept to life.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I agree. Just kind of want to tap in on the aspect that you mentioned about even childhood, and like how those influences that you have, or those interpersonal skills that you have, are signs of entrepreneurship in early age. You made me think about, before buy, sell, trade was popular, I used to have kids school shopping in my closet just because they wanted to, trade Jordans and trade jerseys. Jerseys was hot back then. So like it was kind of always in me, and I didn't know it. Even though I put some money in my shoebox to buy some more Jordans, I didn't know I was doing business. I just knew that I wanted some more Jordans. So it's in all of us, like Dean McCoy was saying, you just kind of gotta, listen to like what Dr. Lucas was saying and see those pain points that you might be experiencing. I wanted those Jordans so bad, how am I gonna get them? I see some others that want some that I have, and maybe I can share them with exchange for money. So there's small things that you can do to, tap into those entrepreneurial skills that you have without it being a mainstream business just yet, just practicing those skills, that might be inside of you that not really paying attention to. So, hats off to what, you guys just unpacked there. I hope, a lot of people can, resonate with that for sure.
I'm sure they're beginning to think about that, right? What is it that I have done in the past or grew up? Some things they're probably already doing and never really thought about it as a business. So let's look at the cultural and historical insights that are unique to the HBCUs, because we have a rich, rich legacy of fostering self-determination and resourcefulness within our Black communities. In terms of teaching entrepreneurship, our roles, we have a responsibility to encourage our students to not only create wealth, right, but to be intentional about building enterprises that benefit their communities. So my question to you is, what are some of the ways we can reflect this spirit and infuse it into our entrepreneurship programs at HBCUs? Dr. Lucas, I was, okay, you, okay. Because you
So
get into that.
yeah, so we are, I mean, again, everyone, we're in Baltimore, and I think, where many HBCUs are located are typically in areas that have rich history, right? And what I think is important is for students to understand where they are and the history around those cities or states or counties or like wherever they are, and really understand like how did people that look like us every single day create opportunities in the communities and where we're located. And so when I think I am a big visionary. And I remember growing up in my city and walking down the street and seeing community-based businesses where the neighbors were the owners, right? And what does that actually look like? And how does that impact the economy locally? And nationally. And so just trying to connect those dots for students, because a lot of times they're not thinking about that, right? They're thinking about, how do I become the next TikTok star? How do I go viral on social media? But what does that look like when you actually take those businesses and embed them back into your community? And that was the premise of us creating the National Association of Mom Entrepreneurs. It literally started in West Baltimore in my church basement, because I know that moms were more than more than half of the households in West Baltimore were ran by single mothers living below the poverty level. Yet these mothers had gifts and talents that we've been utilizing since the beginning of times to really help connect our communities. And so I wanted them to build businesses, embed them back into the community, because that's where the connections and things come from when we're trying to create wealth and generate wealth, right? In our state, it comes from, that's why small businesses are the engines behind our economy, because we are the driving force of hiring, and we're the driving force of really circulating the dollar. And so if we can get students to really understand what does it look like to impact your community, not just having a nonprofit organization, but having your business stationed in your city, right? Established in your city. That is taking up, that is helping to produce and increase the economic power in those communities. And so I try to really just explain that and show that. 1 year for our students, we did a community walk, and we took students, in a certain radius up and down the street and counted the number of community-based small businesses so that they can see what does that actually look like in this community. And so those are some of the things that we like to do.
What I love about your story is that you are impacting the community you came from. You know it well.
And I wanted to add to it. So one of the things I want to do is take a more macro approach to that question. One, when we talk about not just wealth generation, but entrepreneurship, in a higher ed institution, especially at HBCUs, where predominantly of our scholars are African American or African descent, a couple things that I want to mention is that the first is like wealth building. We're talking to young people who are taking on debt. The vast majority of them already have debt. So we're saying be an entrepreneur, but yet you're maybe at a school that's $200,000 in debt. So how do we have a real conversation about are our academic institutions igniting entrepreneurship when we're riddling individuals with debt and then saying, hey, we don't have family wealth, we may not have personal wealth, but now you have a couple $100,000 in wealth. Yeah, now go start a business. How when I now have bills, right? So this is the part that how do we now have a different conversation? How do we start talking to families and our high school scholars to say, pick the school that is the cheapest. Once again, very good, still good. Tons of schools around. But who's going to give you the most money? Scholarships or whatever it may be, athletic, academic, because you want to have more capital, because you're going to need it. Because if your family doesn't have it, your friends don't have it, you're going to have to be one of your first investors. But once again, we like I said, we riddle them with debt and then turn around and say, hey, where's $50,000? They're like, well, I'm paying $2,000 a month on a student loan. How do I do that? Then how do I live? And then how do I have a job when I'm only making $85,000, but then 60% of my income is going to just bills and living, right? So how do we now do this? And like I said, the first part is how do we now start thinking about wealth generation earlier so that in college they're purchasing property, not purchasing loans, right? So these are the different things that like from a macro level that we have to have a real conversation with. So as our scholars are coming in when they're looking for scholarship, how do you think about this in a wealth building way? How do you use your opportunity to build assets, not debt? And so that's the first part I would say, and that helps unlock a lot of opportunities. So we're not at 26, 27, 28 with undergrad, master's degree, $400,000 in debt, and we're wishing we had assets to leverage for our company where, once again, we have the ingenuity. Like you said, we're built to do this. We're built to be phenomenal entrepreneurs. But to be an entrepreneur, you need money. You need access to capital. And when you're riddled with debt, it impacts your ability to acquire the money to launch your idea.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that you took it to that macro level when thinking about the community impact. I guess I would challenge us all to think about combining the micro and the macro level of, making that decision of college, even an entrepreneurial decision, like you're saying, and thinking about, how, which college you choose can impact, the impact you may have on your community, starting with your own family, and the family that you want to develop, the family that you want to create. You're starting off with debt, then that might be pretty tough, so just having a, entrepreneurial mindset about your college journey as a whole, can kind of help, reduce or eliminate that debt, because now you're being an entrepreneur about finding funding, about using grants or even reaching out to investors the same way you would for a business for your education. Those different strategies are definitely key. One thing that I can say about the community aspect of it is that each one teach one type of energy. So let's say you do find some scholarships or you do find some grants. Now you can have, a small consulting firm of your own where you can help other students do the same, and maybe take a percentage off the top or whatever it may be, charge them a membership, however it is, but utilizing that, academic, pursuit as an entrepreneurial endeavor before you get into too much debt. Is definitely a good strategy to support your community, starting with your family in mind. Another thing is, that nonprofit space, having that nonprofit space, that nonprofit 501c3, is a gold mine, for those of you that are kind of in that space and know the tax support that you get with 501c3s to be able to, get funding that people can write off, to get grants and things of that nature that then could also support your academic pursuits as well. So nonprofits, I really always encourage all entrepreneurs to also have a nonprofit. I guess that is the Melanin Valley side of me, of making sure that you have some purpose-driven, approaches to your business, no matter what type of industry you go into, so that you're not just a, money-hungry person out here. You're actually still trying to help people. There's kind of 3 points that I kind of like to help people think about when they're considering entrepreneurship. The first is it just need to be realistic, something that you can really do with what you have, the resources you have, the time that you have, people that you know, something that you can really do. The second is, it has to be profitable. It needs to make you more back of what you put in, not just money, but energy, time, your resources, all of that needs to make you more back. And then the last thing, it needs to be socially responsible. So that's that Mountain Valley side again. It has to help somebody else other than you. So, that third one will probably entice you to start some type of nonprofit that will support your for-profit. So, think about, not limiting yourself when it comes to even structuring your business so that you can impact the community and reduce your, financial burdens at the same time.
I love it. And it even means that as instructors in the classroom, that these conversations can rise informally. We don't have to only have them in the classroom. As a matter of fact, I think it's better that we get out and meet them where they are, whether it's at the games or in the student centers, wherever they are. I know they have different types of clubs on campuses, but it doesn't have to be a club. These general conversations need to take place, and they need to take place more frequently so that they're not 26 and 27 waking up to the debt. So I think you gave me a great segue, Dr. Powell, into our next segment here. We have a professor, Dr. Oyeleye, who is the program coordinator and a professor that teaches in entrepreneurship concentration here in the College of Business. He had a student that was interested in addressing a gap in the services in her community. And everything started out like really, really cool. She conducted her research to see what the interest was. Everything came back really good. But it wasn't until she began exploring what it would take to execute that business that the bad news and the challenges came. She realized that, oh my goodness, this is going to cost me. I need licenses. I need certifications. I need specific spaces that have to meet requirements in order to do this thing. So she got really discouraged because she didn't even think that she would be able to find any funding. This is not like just one story that is new to us, because we hear this and we see this and we experience this all the time among our students. But for a student like this, what types of resources and funding are available specifically for HBCU students pursuing entrepreneurial ventures? Some of you have touched on it, but can we get a little deep and more specific as to what we can share with our students to help them when they get to this point? Because it almost seems as though all hope is lost when in fact it isn't. Venture capitalists.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and to jump in that one. So one, I'll talk about, like, I guess you could say access to capital. And I think everyone here kind of mentioned like wealth generation and how do we start this? And once again, not to beat a dead horse, but once again, is how do we now have economic flexibility? So that's the conversation we need to be adding at a very early age. Once again, it's always academic attainment, which is great. But how do we have this economic flexibility and freedom? Once again, how do you start amassing assets, or once again, being responsible with your dollars, so that when you get to these spaces, when you need $10,000 for a lawyer, when you need accounting advising, or when you need to pay several $1,000s for a license or certification, you have it. You have access to some of those dollars to launch. And just once again, and none of these things are they're always the right answer. These are some of the solutions to a very large thing. But when someone sees you putting not only your time but your money into something, that's also a value add when you're then seeking other people to invest, your friends, your families, or institutional investments. When they see that you're putting in money, but when you're saying, hey, I don't have any money, And then once again, then that also once again puts you at a slight deficit, but that's not the end of the world. But once again, how do you build a team? So if you don't have the money, how do you find individuals who either have it or who have access to it? And so access to capital is extremely important. And like I said, I'm not gonna get into the structural issues with access to capital because that's probably another panel for another day. But what we face right now is that. And so one of the things that we can do with our young people and our faculty is how do we now start being better with our dollars, right? And if we start doing that, not just with ourselves, but just imagine one of our institutions where our young people and our faculty are cash positive, right? So now you have a community of investors as opposed to individuals who are saying, man, look, I got debt too. I got a master's degree, a PhD. Look, I'm still paying off my debt. So we can't even go to our own communities for this, right? So how do we start changing that? If we now start looking at individuals who don't have debt in undergrad or who don't have debt in masters, who are once again looking to save their money to look for an entrepreneur like that brilliant scholar that you just mentioned, then we have a different environment just on our campus, and that's something that we can change immediately while we're trying to change structural things with access to capital. But like I said, if we do this earlier on and say, how do you build your assets? All your decisions should have an economic component into it. And once again, social impact is so important. So we can't lose that. But we also have to just add in, does this make financial sense? Does this put me behind the eight ball? So going to a particular college or going to do X, Y, and Z, right? Is this going to put me behind the eight ball? So once again, you want to have financial freedom and flexibility so that when an entrepreneurial opportunity comes, that you have the ability to invest in it.
So
Thank
I would
you.
also say, I mean, first venture for them, Keontae, shameless plug. I think they offer really good resources specifically for HBCU students, but I think it's important for students to really tap into their network of instructors and administration because there are a plethora of resources that we have access to or we may know about, but we need our students to really tell us what it is that they actually need or tell us that they're interested in something so that we can build that shield of community around them to help them navigate resources. Um, I think for the most part, most colleges, especially HBCUs, have some type of entrepreneurship center. And so it's important for you to connect with your center, connect with your business professors, because what you have to realize, and this is in all higher ed institutions, is that a lot of people work in silos, unfortunately, right? That has been just how higher ed has been for a very long time. And so while you may not be a business student, you could be a computer science major. It's important for you to say, hey, let me go over to the business school to see what they have available. Let me stay connected, get on listservs, be part of clubs and things like that. So you know what's actually what you that we know that you as a student at the institution, not a business student, but a student at the overall institution, have some type of interest, and we can start floating those resources that come across our desk and email to you. I know that in 2 weeks a lot of us will be traveling to Afrotech. They have a lot of resources and networking and things like that students, that I think all HBCU students, regardless if you're interested in the tech industry, should at least experience one time. There are economic conferences that most higher ed and HBCUs are hosting. Be part of that network, learn how to open your mouth and actually talk to people, because that has been a huge issue with all students, is knowing how to actually hold a conversation with someone, and talk about the things that they desire. And I think we have to help change the mindset that no, this is not going to be easy as you step out to venture to do something, but if you follow some steps and you take your time, slow and steady always wins the race. And remember that it's not a race. Like you have to take your time and actually do this and build and build. And so while there are very specific resources depending on what students are trying to do, I think the mindset shift and really understanding that you have to speak up in order for you to get access to resources that you need to be successful.
Yes, Dr. Lucas, yes. Closed mouth don't get fed. And shout out
I was going to
to
say that, but
Hannah.
I didn't know if that was a
Hey, this is HBCU talk right here. Keep
That's
it
it.
real.
It's real
That's what my
talk.
mom always told me. Closed mouth don't get fed. You better ask for it if you want it. So Hannah, shout out to you for responding to Angel. It just piggybacks on what someone said earlier. Your network is your net worth. You know, closed mouth don't get fed. These quotables of our historic resonance that we have as Black folks. Like really soak in those gems that the wise folks told you, and make sure that you speak up for what it is that you believe in, what you want. The network is really the easiest way to overcome that financial barrier, because you literally may find someone or know someone who knows someone that can support you financially or show you these different financial tools. Coming to events like this, shout out to Keontae and Venture for them and Bowie State University, being a participant in these things, whether you go to the HBCU or not, whether you're at a PWI, there are plenty of Black people at those PWIs that's trying to create organizations and collaboratives for the Black people that are there. Like, just get in the mix if you really want it that bad. If you're scared, then go to church and pray, talk to God about it. God will lead you the way too. Either way, you got to open your heart, open your mind, open your mouth in order to get what it is that you need to make it to that next level. Whether you run into an obstacle or not, that's part of the journey. You're gonna hit many brick walls, and eventually you'll turn into the Hulk, female or male version, and bust right through them if you keep going. But it's all about that determination and really, speaking up and putting yourself out there. This is my first time being in Africa, you know what I mean? But I've invested in it before I even came. So I didn't know it was going to work, but I believed and I trusted. And I went to church myself and prayed to God about it. You know what I mean? So I was scared. There's nothing wrong with being scared. There's nothing wrong with, seeking God for some clarity. You know what I mean? God is going to speak to you and through other people as well. So when you speak up, you go to these events, you network, God will speak to you through them and provide what it is you need. You have everything you need. Money, is going to get, spent and made all day, every day. So don't let that be your stopping point for sure.
Thank you for that. And I just want you to know that the HBCU is home. We are home base. So we want to make sure that we usher our students into these spaces where they may feel uncomfortable, that if you're going to make a mistake, you're going to make the mistake with us. We're going to help you through it. We're going to make sure that you have the resources, because our goal is to ensure that you are successful, because the impact in the community is where I go home to. That's where we all go home to. And so the value isn't just what we bring to the table, but it's also what the students bring for us. And so that helps us to do what we do better. We enjoy what we do. I can see from this panel, we are live and in color. This is what we do, and this is how we do it. So I'm going to thank all of my panel guests. You all are awesome. I'm looking at the chat as we go along. This is really cool. And so we do have some questions in there as well. So I'm going to take a moment to turn this over to Keontae.
Thank you, Dr. Wendy. First and foremost, please hop in the chat and show some love to our amazing panelists. It is not over yet. We do have 5 minutes before we close, but I did want to hear from you all. I'm seeing some questions in the chat. And so what I want to do is address at least 2 questions that I've seen in the chat, if our panelists can expand on that. The first one I saw was, how can Black students get more into entrepreneurial communities without attending an HBCU? I think that's a really important one. And then the second one we'll dive into is, they want to know a bit more about your business strategy in terms of approaching the LLC versus the nonprofit structure and so forth. Maybe some of the different tax strategies and things of that nature. So we'll kick it off with that first question. Just Black students in general getting more into entrepreneurial communities without going to a HBCU, and then going into that second one of business strategy. So please feel free to dive in, panelists. Thank you.
Y'all got me going first the whole time, but I'm gonna go ahead and accept it. So I think, one, this is a great start. Attending today has put you in a room with, Black community, right? You don't necessarily have to go to an HBCU again to be part of, the Black entrepreneurship world, which I think is important. I think that really, again, opening your mouth and saying, hey, I want to do X, Y, Z is really the first step. I just gave one resource, which is Afrotech, right? Like there's going to be tons of us in Houston in 2 weeks and connecting and building. But also look at the entrepreneurship centers at different HBCUs, because the programming is not just always for just the students that attend, but it's for the community. You have to remember that these institutions are anchor institutions, which means they are connecting the institution to the community. And so many of the things that, and I can specifically say that we do here at Coppin, even at Morgan, is for the community. It's not just for the students, right? And so get on the mailing list so that you know what's actually going on. Connect with the PNC Entrepreneurship Center at Howard, which, you know, runs centers all over. So it's not just, again, at Howard University. You know, they have one at Morgan, they have different locations, but again, it's not just for the students that are attending, it's for the community as well. And I think it's also going to matter like where you are in the United States. In Baltimore, we're very connected to DC. We're a train ride, so there's a lot of things that's happening from Baltimore to DC. Especially because there are two HBCUs in in DC, and Bowie is like down the street. So a lot of them get together in these communities, co-working spaces, the gathering spot. Like these are all places that you can go and build your Black entrepreneurship community. But I think once you go to one thing like today, you're gonna meet people. Hopefully you can meet people virtually. I just want to let you guys know that, reaching out to people that you've seen and just ask, hey, do you know of any upcoming events that I can attend? And just being intentional with asking what it is that you want and how you want to engage.
I also wanted to share a quick story about, I always talk about the HBCU experience, but I broke camp and and was at a PWI for my master's. But what I did as a student had an interest in the community, which was in the poorest Black county in North Carolina, and wanted to understand how technology could bring prosperity. And that was what I conducted my research in, really understanding the community, getting to know the community. And people think because I give you a laptop that it works. Now, this is totally rural, and that was not it. What happened, long story short, is that technology meant so many things to that community, and it wasn't even a laptop. Technology was, how do I use the ATM? How do I get access to a Wi-Fi? A satellite? Like, how do I get the internet? What does this mean? There was one library, but generating the interest and moving around the community and going to churches and going to the picnics, right? All of the community events and talking to the people. It turned out that it was a service that the students ended up providing to the community, which was educating the community members on the use of technology that they already had before we could introduce what a laptop, what a desktop was, what internet meant, and how valuable it was to have those resources, that they could appreciate what was already there that they didn't know how to use. So that interest in the predominantly white institution that I went to is what helped me to get the interest, the funding to conduct the research and actually turn that into a nonprofit.
And I do want to say sorry, apologize, of course. Technology, as you were speaking, I'm out here in Uganda, so it might go in and out sometimes. But I'm glad I lasted this long. But definitely seek out the HBCU space. I'm gonna just reiterate that again. And the Center for Entrepreneurships, that is, somewhat of a new thing in all universities, even PWIs, but it's obviously here to stay now. And each university's Center for Entrepreneurship is going to get bigger and better and stronger. And they are for the community, whether you go to that school or not. Seek out those HBCU spaces, the people that look like you, talk like you, walk like you, and give you that love to give you those resources. Because sometimes, in America, we kind of get selfish and want to, hide these resources and not share them because we think somebody's going to take our spot and stuff like that. But at these HBCU spaces, again, shout out to Venture for Them, shout out to Bowie State, they're going to provide opportunities for more people to win so they can keep funding that space. The more people that use it, the more they can provide it. So seek out these, HBCU Center for Entrepreneurships, even the PWI ones, but always find the spaces that, people welcome you, people value you, more than you have been, in the spaces that you're used to. But there are spaces out there that will, help provide you the skills, knowledge, ability, network to grow with. But yeah, keep seeking them out and definitely, again, shout out to Bowie State and Venture for Them for putting this on. Definitely a great space right now.
Thank you. Dean McCoy?
I don't know if we're doing parting words or answering those questions, but
So we have
no,
about 4 more minutes, so I'm gonna.
okay. Well, I didn't know if there was other questions, but I think the resources that Dr. Lewis and Dr. Powell mentioned, once again, it just continue to ask the question because each institution and each, as she mentioned, their resources are different in each one. So you can go to one institution and their centers of this information lives in one area, one lives in a center, one lives in career services. So just keep asking questions. And for our scholars that are listening, pay attention to your email. Is I can only tell you how many times that resources, phenomenal organizations that are part of this summit and others that are always emailing me saying, hey, I have this opportunity, this resource, and we send it out. We send it out to scholars, we put it on Canvas, we send it out so many different ways, different departments, different faculty heads, they send it out, and then I have scholars come up to me and say, hey, I need some help. And I was like, did you see the last 13 emails we sent in the last week? You didn't respond to any of them. They're like, oh, you somebody sent it out, right? So the resources are there. Once again, pay attention to all your communication styles. Everyone communicates different, but check your email, scholars, because a lot of information sent from our institutions are passed through email. So definitely pay attention to that. But like I said, just keep asking questions.
All right. In our last 2 minutes, I'm going to give everyone a chance to just leave some parting words for all of our virtual audience. And thank you again for participating on this dynamic panel. Dr. Lucas, since you have always kicked it off, we're going to let you start again.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think this was great. I've had 2 classes come in and out of my classroom today to listen in, and hopefully it did give them some type of inspiration, but also understand the importance of connection, and opening your mouth and asking questions and asking for help. And so I would just encourage everyone to make sure that you connect with us on LinkedIn. I do share a lot of information there, but I also want to know, how can I better help you all engage in our students, but also kind of spread resources around our ecosystem, specifically here in Baltimore. So thank you. This was great. I'm happy to connect with everyone on the panel. I love to meet new colleagues in the spaces where we're growing entrepreneurship as well as academia.
Thank you. Dean McCoy, parting words.
I have a couple of things for just different constituents that are on the call for our administrators at our HBCUs. One, if we want entrepreneurial ecosystems, it starts with you. Are you asking the right questions? Are you removing the barriers that our faculty and our scholars live in to have entrepreneurial thinking, critical thinking, the spaces and the resources? And so it starts with you if you want the entrepreneurial experience. And for our faculty, be uncomfortable. And so how do you bring in things outside your classroom? It doesn't diminish your credentials. It doesn't change your impact, but bring in experiential learning, especially when we're talking about entrepreneurial, because these individuals that are on this call and some of my colleagues would love to be a part of your classroom experience, would love not just to do a guest lecture, not just to come and do a quick talk, but be a part of their experience. And so invite people on to do an experience. So not just be a teacher, be a guide for our scholars' experience. And so if our faculty think in that space, we'll provide that support for them. And then for our scholars, you do not have to have the right question. You just have to be curious. And so the value of this space in entrepreneurship is not being an A student, it's just being curious. Ask the question, speak it out, and trust me, you'll get the resources and the team that you need.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Powell, quickly. I'm sorry.
All right, well, thank y'all so much for having me. My last parting words, will be a little plug. As I'm here in Africa, I'm working on creating the African American Center for Entrepreneurship because I see the value in the Center for Entrepreneurship. So I would like for all the HBCU representatives out there to receive my contact from Keontae Venture for Them, Bowie State, to see how you can be a part in representing your HBCU here in Africa and representing the businesses that are coming from those Center for Entrepreneurships here in Africa to expand your business globally. So we will have the headquarters here at Chimbogo University in Uganda. It is a major university in this area. So all the universities in Africa that are tied to it, there are about 16 of them right now, and they all have 30,000 students plus. So I would like to make sure that they are connected to all the HBCUs, and you guys can have this, cross seas pipeline of, innovation and entrepreneurship on a global scale. And again, closed mouths don't get fed. So just continue to open your mouths, continue to show up, continue to reach out for mentorship for people that, are in your spaces, those HBCUs, Center for Entrepreneurships. And then shout out to Virginia State University. I don't know if anybody shouted them out yet, but I helped them create their Center for Entrepreneurship and their MBA program. So to Virginia State. But yeah, thanks for having me. And I appreciate, everybody chiming in, asking great questions, giving great advice. Much love to you and yours and our people. Keep it going. Each one teach one.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Please be sure to connect with our speakers. This was such an awesome session. We're super grateful for you all. Please be sure to connect with them on LinkedIn. And everybody have a great next session. We did drop the links in the chat to the next 2 sessions. So please select one and we'll get started in the next 2 minutes for those sessions. Thank you guys.
You.
Great one.